strikes off the table in Iran, and does he believe there's a potential path to end the protest there without military action?
Well, I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately. And I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary. And nobody knows that better than Iran.
The White House insists all options are on the table as they watch events unfold in Iran. There are queries as to how quickly the US president could take action. Michael Clark explains.
The Iranian government have been very successful at blocking out news coming out of the country, with taking down the internet and even apparently being able to interfere with the Starlink signals that were providing a sort of a link. But we do know a certain amount that is relevant to the protests. A couple of things. Sky Forensics has been able to identify the places where protest is taking place. And two really important markers are evident on that. One is it's taking place not just in the capital but elsewhere. That's always a big step in national protests. The second thing is we look at the targets of the protesters. They're not just overturning cars and setting fire to them. That's easy. Lots of protests do that. They're going for government buildings. They're going for government infrastructure. They're hitting at the government, and there's no way back when they start to do that. So they are very determined. The government said that they will suppress it, and the United States has said that they will not stand for the suppression of the protesters and seem to be working themselves up in the US to intervene in some way or other. What can they do? Well, there's a series of non-kinetic options. So they could try cyber attacking the IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guard, and the secret police that operate with them. They could try maybe decapitating some of them by actually taking out, by assassination, some of those leaders of the IRGC. And they could try to build up the idea of an alternative transitional government. There is a transitional council to make it clear that there is a group of people who could move in and establish a better government if this government falls. But they also have some military options, and President Trump seems to imply that he's getting quite interested in them. The Americans have air bases all over the Middle East. The two most important are at Al Udeid in Qatar and Al Dhafra in the United Arab Emirates. And they have big forces there that are able to do lots of different things. It's possible that Middle Eastern governments wouldn't be happy about air operations against Iran being staged from their countries. If that were the case, then the United States could use Ramstein in Germany. That's their big base. They can do lots of things from Ramstein, and they can get to Iran from there. If they couldn't do that, they could also use their carriers. Their aircraft carriers provide them with a lot of flexibility, but although they have 10 or 11 of these carrier battle groups, they've only got 3 of them operational that we know of at the moment. The Gerald Ford is in the Caribbean. The George Washington is in Japan. The Abraham Lincoln, that's the closest, but that is in the South China Sea. And to get from the South China Sea to Iran is a journey of about 3,500 nautical miles. So that would actually take 5 or 6 days minimum for the Abraham Lincoln to get to the right place. It might happen. But the fact is, the American military are preparing for every eventuality, but only the man in the White House will decide which eventuality they might choose.
Well, for more analysis on what's happening on the ground in Iran and what the Trump administration may be considering, I'm joined by Jared Monsheen from the US Studies Centre. Thanks for your time today, Jared, as always. The White House has been talking about this for a number of days now, the president threatening to use military force if we see the regime target protesters directly. Then this morning on Truth Social, imposing tariffs on countries who do trade with Iran. How does this sort of pressure campaign, what could it lead to?
You know, trying to predict the Trump administration, their actions is a bit of a fool's errand. But on the whole, the Wall Street Journal seems to be reporting that there are a whole wide array of actions that President Trump is considering. It seems that the vice president is leading efforts to want to find a diplomatic solution, a non-kinetic option. Seems that most of the options before President Trump in this meeting were non-kinetic, but not all of them. And so I think at this point, you have to admit that President Trump is pretty confident after seeing what's happened in his last strike on Iran, after seeing what happened in Venezuela with the removal of Maduro. There, he's feeling pretty confident in the U.S. military's tactical abilities, and he is at this point removing no options on the table.
He went campaigning on this Make America Great Again platform, America First. But in this second term, it seems like there is a shift in the Trump foreign policy, a willingness, as you say, to go after these sort of targeted military options. We saw it earlier this year when it comes to Venezuela. How big a shift has that been? Is there a pushback that you can detect from the Trump base as to that kind of jarring nature of the America First agenda?
Very much so. I think the MAGA base has been very reluctant to get involved in what they call forever wars or nation building, and they want to focus more at home. On one hand, you see that in the very strong debates over the strike on Iran just a few months ago. But on the other hand, you see perhaps less or more muted debates about what happened in Venezuela, because that is arguably closer to home, as the recently released U.S. national security strategy talks about. But I think when it comes to next steps on Iran, I imagine that it will continue to be quite a huge source of contention within the MAGA base. You only have to look at someone like Tucker Carlson to see what he has been saying about Iran to see that debate play out.